Home buyers, your day is coming. Now, if you've been listening to my channel for a little while, you would know that I don't think it's the greatest time to buy a house. And a lot of people who overbid on properties over the past couple years paid over asking price because they were able to get super low interest rates and maybe that helped their buying power. Well, those people are about to have buyer's remorse because things are starting to get easier for home buyers out there. And we're going to talk about numerous different things in today's video that all point to this. The first thing is the housing market is literally turning as we speak, guys. Right now, as I'm making this video, if you're a home buyer out there, you literally have 20% more listings to choose from on average in your market than you had just 1 year ago. Now, 1 year ago is not that long, and one thing we have to keep in mind with the housing market is things move very slowly, okay? It's very normal for the housing market to take years to shift. I've had a lot of people ask me in the comments, hey Michael, when is it gonna be the best time to buy? When is the housing market gonna hit the bottom? Well, if we look at the last housing crash, when things really started coming down in 2008, prices didn't really hit bottom until around 2011. So that took a good 3 years, guys, maybe 4 years, depending on where you live, for the housing market to go from the top to the bottom. And in some areas it started dropping sooner, like in 2007. So it can vary depending on the area. But the fact that there are 20% more listings available right now than there were just a year ago is really good news for home buyers. And it's not just having more choices that's helping out home buyers right now, but it's also the fact that a ton of listings out there have price cuts. So this is another thing that's helping people, because not only do you have more to choose from, but sellers are starting to realize that the ball is not in their court anymore, and if they want to sell their home, it needs to be priced at a realistic price that someone can actually afford and that it will probably appraise at. That's the other thing. Got one for sale over here. At least they got some nice curb appeal here. Looks like they probably did some painting and some landscaping to get this house ready for sale. But they should have cleaned up that garbage over there. Let's see how much this one's going for. Now, the other thing that's good news for you home buyers out there is that the bidding wars are basically over pretty much everywhere. If you live in an area right now where there's still bidding wars, then obviously the market there is still extremely hot and probably a very desirable place to live, no matter what's going on in the world. But for the majority of you out there watching, your market probably doesn't have bidding wars anymore, which is another great point when it comes to buying a home right now. Now, the first thing I want you to realize by listening to me here is that I'm not saying that right now is the best time ever to buy a house. I'm just saying that if you have been trying in the past year and basically getting burned left and right, things are gonna start getting easier. I'm not saying it's the best time to just go out there and make an offer on a property. But speaking of making offers, now you as the buyer are more in a position to offer a realistic price. You don't have to offer over asking price pretty much at all. And you don't need to be waiving your inspections and waiving your appraisal contingencies, all these things that I hate that people do, that I actually think is the worst thing ever when it comes to buying a house. You're giving up all of your rights to basically inspect the property or have it appraised at the value that it's supposed to be. And I think that could be a death wish, especially right now. So I think a lot of buyers that did this over the past year are gonna start having buyer's remorse and some regrets going on, thinking that they did this just a little too soon. You see, this is what happens when you don't have patience and you FOMO into the market, guys. Anybody out there that paid 100K over asking for their house just because they were able to get a low interest rate, good luck with that. Because guess what? The value of that house is probably going to come down in the next 12 months. And speaking of all this, more and more home buyers are starting to back out of real estate contracts as well. Right now, home buyers are canceling their real estate contracts at the highest rate since COVID hit. And this is a good sign as well. And why is this happening? Well, obviously people are having a hard time getting the financing that they need to, especially when prices are still high because the interest rates are high. So there's the first thing, and that applies mainly to a lot of new construction builds. You know, you say I'm going to buy this new construction property, and you put down your deposit over a year ago when interest rates were 3%, well, now it's a different story. And a lot of these people who are buying new construction homes no longer can afford to buy them. So that's the first thing. The next thing is that buyers are canceling contracts on existing home sales as well for a multitude of different reasons. It doesn't really say in the article why people are doing this, but I would imagine it's due to the fact that maybe the appraisal is not coming in because values are extremely high right now, and a lot of times the appraisal can be the deal breaker when it comes to buying a home when you're financing. So that could be the first thing. And the second thing is obviously the inspection. And these are the two things that buyers were waiving just not even 6 months ago, guys. Now you as the buyer have more power to then say, hey, I'm not gonna buy this house. There's too many problems here. If you as the seller don't wanna give me a decent credit to fix it or to, repair all these things yourself, then I'm out. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. See this over here? They're doing the termite tenting. This house must be full of termites. Pretty common down here in South Florida. And by the way, for anybody wondering real quick, I'm walking around North Bay Village today. I'm not in Miami Beach, so I'm just across the bridge. It's a little island right in between the mainland of Florida and Miami Beach. So according to this data from Redfin, about 15% of all real estate contracts were canceled in June this year. So that's quite a bit, guys. That's, almost a fifth of all real estate contracts being canceled. So I would say that's pretty high. And I think buyers are finally starting to wake up to the fact that there's more to life than just the couple of listings you thought you could buy, as more and more places start hitting the market and sit on the market for longer, and you start seeing the prices come down. And especially now with the fears of recession, and nobody really knows how bad it can be. Nobody knows how bad inflation's gonna be or how long all this is gonna last. And so right now, buying the most expensive purchase of your entire life isn't looking like the best opportunity right now. So one thing I just want all of you to realize out there, if you are in the market to buy now or in the next couple of months, is realize that this is not the same market it was 6 months ago, and that you as the home buyer have more leverage than you did just a few months ago. And it's because of all the reasons we just mentioned. So definitely don't buy the first house you see just because you think that's all you're ever going to be able to buy, guys. And I still think that the best buying opportunities are still yet to come. But I understand some people just need to buy right now for whatever reason. And if that is you, just realize that you're now the position to, make several offers on properties. And you know what? Offer what you think is fair, okay? Offer on the property what you're willing to pay for that place, not just because the seller is asking blah, 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 blah. You offer the fair price. Now, if you lowball the property too much and it's below market value, the chances of you getting it are slim to none. I'm not saying that sellers are going to be extremely desperate and just accept any offer because the market's shifting. That's probably not going to happen. But at least you're not in a situation where you're probably going to be in a bidding war and have to overpay for the property just to get it. Looks like they're doing a roof behind me here. These guys are the real heroes, man. Being up on top of that roof all day and this heat, oh my God. Especially on top of the roof, it's gotta be like 10 or 20 degrees hotter than it is on the street here. And the best thing about this news is that if you're gonna be buying in the near future, buyer's remorse is gonna be much less of a potential issue for you than it was for people that bought, maybe within the last 6 months or so, right before the market started shifting and interest rates started to climb. So you don't want to be that guy with buyer's remorse. And as time goes on, like I've been saying, guys, as this year keeps moving forward, I think you're going to be less and less in that position where you might have to worry about buyer's remorse, because the conditions are going to continue to be more and more in favor of the buyer than the seller as the next year goes by. Now, I told you guys I had a bunch of good news for you today if you're a home buyer. The next thing is that if you've been renting, let's say for 4 or 5 years or whatever, but you don't have a lot of credit, say you don't have any credit cards or anything like that, well, in the past, it would have been very difficult for you to qualify for a mortgage because you just don't have the credit history to show that you pay your bills on time and all of that. Well, as of this past Sunday, that has now been changed. And this is something that a lot of people in the real estate business have been calling for a long time, and I think it's a great advancement for future home buyers. And that is, your on-time rent payments now are going to count towards being able to qualify to buy a house. And I think this is excellent news because I even wish that was the case for me. When I was much younger, I wanted to buy something. A few years after I got into real estate, prices were still really low, but I just didn't have the amount of credit. I mean, my credit was good, but I didn't have the credit maturity, so to speak. I didn't have credit long enough because I was only like 21 at the time and only had a credit card for like 3 years. So it wasn't enough time for a mortgage lender to give me a loan. But now, if you can prove that you've been paying your rent on time for the past 12 months, this will now qualify you to get a mortgage, which is excellent news. Now, the one thing it doesn't say about this, which I'm unsure of, but for example, when you go to get a loan, chances are they're not going to finance you above a 28% debt to income ratio, which just means that the most that they're going to qualify you for a monthly payment on a potential home is 28% of your monthly income. In some cases, they will raise it to up to 40%, but that's usually only if your credit is amazing, over 800, and if you have basically no debt. So there are some instances where you can get that debt to income ratio higher, but usually it's around 28 to 30% for most people. Now, with rent prices going up the way that they have been, my only concern is okay, say you're a renter and you're paying $2,000 a month right now in rent, and you can prove that you've been paying $2,000 a month in rent, but it's above your 30% debt to income ratio. My concern and question is if lenders are going to consider that as well. Technically you can't afford the payment in their eyes if it's higher. Say that's 40% of your income, but they're only willing to approve you for 28 or 30%. My concern and question is, will they take that into consideration as well when thinking about your qualifying amount? My guess is probably not. They're probably going to stick to those lower debt to income ratio numbers. So the downside to this is say you've been paying $2,000 a month in rent, but if your actual debt to income ratio only qualifies you for $1,500, then you're going to be looking at affording a lower end home than what you're living in right now, essentially. So the good news is that there's going to be an option for home buyers out there to qualify in a way that they never could before. But the bad news is it could end up qualifying you for buying less of a home than you live in right now, if that makes sense. Unless you're one of those people that lives in an apartment complex where the landlord required you to make 3 times your monthly rent, which roughly boils down to about the same number. That's about 33%. So if you are in one of those situations, then there's a good chance your qualifying payment could be equal to what you pay in rent right now. So basically how this works, guys, is all you need to be able to do is prove that you pay your rent on time for the past 12 months. And this can be in the form of bank statements. Doesn't matter how you pay. Could be, Venmo, direct deposit, Cash App, whatever. That it just needs to show that you're paying your rent on time and in full each month. And if you have a good credit score, then that's going to be enough to qualify you. And one quick note on that, if you pay your rent in cash, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you. It's not impossible, but they're going to need the landlord to verify that you've been paying on time each month in order to qualify if you're somebody that pays your rent in cash. So keep that in mind as well. Now, a few weeks ago, I mentioned how Redfin and Compass laid off a bunch of their employees in anticipation of this housing market slowdown because they think this is going to last for years, not for months, guys. So keep that in mind. Big companies like Compass and Redfin think that this housing market crash or downturn, whatever you want to call it, is going to be something that will last for years. I wholeheartedly agree, because like I said earlier, these type of things take years to play out. This is not something that's going to happen in a few months and then, you know, by December everything's going to be back to normal. It's not like that. It takes a long time for these housing market dynamics to play out. But on top of those guys, now RE/MAX is laying off some of its employees as well, which is another big real estate firm in the United States. So I think you're going to see more and more of these big real estate companies and mortgage lending companies lay people off in anticipation of the market slowing down. And it's not even an anticipation anymore, guys. It's happening. The stuff that we talked about earlier about places sitting on the market longer and buyers having more leverage, this literally is the market shifting right now. So these companies are seeing that, and they're seeing home sales go down. You know, there's just not as many properties selling as there was a year ago, and they simply can't afford to employ all these people when the business of selling homes is going down. Here's another one right here, just a couple blocks away from the last listing. Looks like it's actually listed by the same broker. Now, on the one hand, I gotta give Redfin some credit here for being transparent with their real estate data, because this is crushing their company right now, guys. Not only have they had to lay a bunch of people off, but their stock market price is tumbling right now because of their transparency and coming out with these announcements saying how bad things are getting in the housing market. And their stock price is reflecting that. It's not every day you see a company basically self-sabotage themselves knowing that this is going to hurt their business in more ways than one. So at least they're out there saying the reality. You know, they're not saying that this is going to last forever like some of the experts out there say. You know, some of these people think that houses will just continue to go up in value no matter what. All right, and we're seeing right now that that's simply not the case. I came across this article today when researching this video that I thought was absolutely crazy, guys. In Melbourne, Australia, they have one of the lowest rental vacancy rates in the entire world right now. It's only like 1.5% of units are vacant. So people are getting desperate, they need a place to live, and there's this landlord there who is listing these sleeping pods in this rental house that he has for $600 a month. $600 a month, guys, to sleep in this little box, and you pretty much just have a place to, you know, sleep at night and basically take a shower. You're sharing bathrooms with all these other people there who are doing this, and the rest of the house is also rented out bedroom by bedroom. So this landlord is totally banking on this property because, you know, he's got multiple bedrooms rented out, and now he's using an entire floor of the house to put these sleeping pods in and charge $600 a month. And I'm gonna put a picture up here so you guys can see what this thing is. And when I saw this, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, would you be willing to sleep in something like this every night that looks like a, you know, you're going into outer space and pay $600 a month for that? Now I can see the appeal for more and more people wanting to be in tents on the street if this becomes the new norm. I would not be paying anybody $600 a month to sleep in that thing. And I guess this is already a pretty common thing in Asian countries, but guys, this is not Asia. This is the United States. This is supposed to be the biggest land of opportunity. And if this comes here, I think that's the beginning of the end. Now, this is from Australia. This is happening there, not here just yet. But hopefully this isn't a sign of things to come. Now, speaking of rentals, there's another story out of New York City about how a lot of these big corporate landlords have a lot of units in these rent-controlled areas over there. And now what they're doing is they're choosing to leave these properties empty instead of rent it to a tenant, because what it does is it helps drive up rent in the entire area by just having less inventory on the market. So a lot of people in the comments I've seen that say, you know, rent control is the answer to these rising rents. But the reality is, guys, is rent control has always pretty much done more harm than good. And now we're starting to see these landlords come up with creative ways to skirt this whole system. And basically, there's no law against keeping one of your units empty versus renting it to somebody, because they're thinking that if they keep these units empty long enough, then they can get the rules changed on just how much they can increase the rent when a new tenant comes in. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep the units empty long enough to get the rules changed so that way they can charge more for the next tenant. And as rental prices continue to go up and finding a place to rent just becomes more and more of an issue, I think we're going to see more things like this happen in cities that have rent control. Don't think that just because you live in a rent control building or city that that's going to be the end all be all. If you're in that unit, and the other reason they're doing this, guys, is because a lot of people that move into rent controlled units, they stay for years and years and years because they have a solid and stable deal, which you can't blame the tenant. Having stability in life is very important. I understand that, but just understand that these landlords are looking for creative ways to get you to move out and find ways to increase the price. So keep that in mind if you live in a rent controlled area. If you guys enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and check out my next video on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.